Right, let's go on to this populism thing. Why has populism become a dirty word in Britain? Cameron used it in his 120 grand speech in the USA last night. It is the new buzzword, of course, at the BBC. It's been bandied about on countless programmes and it dominates the pages of the left-wing papers. There's 17.4 million of us who voted to leave the EU, described as part of a populist revolution. Well, I'm delighted to say I'm now joined by Douglas Murray, associate editor of the Henry Jackson Society, who wrote a brilliant article on this in yesterday's Daily Mail. Good morning, Douglas.
Good morning. Good to be with you, John.
Well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time. It's much appreciated. Why is it a dirty word, populism and populist? I would have thought politicians want to be popular or populist.
Well, you would have thought, wouldn't you?
You'd have thought so, wouldn't you?
But there is definitely a type of politician now who doesn't think quite like that, who believes that the public are have a tendency to have wrong opinions, and we have irksome emotions, and we feel the wrong things and think the wrong things. And there are politicians who think if only the public could be replaced by another public, it would all be fine. And you can hear this in the response to Brexit, the response to Trump, the response to the Italian referendum. And the demonstration I give is if Hillary Clinton had won the White House last month, would we have referred to it as? Would anyone have referred to it as a populist revolution? If more people had voted to remain in the EU on June the 23rd than to leave it, would anyone have referred to it as populist? No. Populist is the term for things that seem to be popular but are slightly whiffy, and the implication is that there's a bit of demagoguery, that that the public are being lied to. We hear that in this whole refrain. Fake news, all of this sort of thing people throw out as excuses for why the public keep on getting the wrong the result. Why is that?
But why whilst they keep on doing this, they're not addressing the main issue, which is why the people of Italy, why the people of the UK, and why now the people of the USA are rejecting the established political establishment elite. They need to look in on themselves, don't they, Douglas?
Yes, that's what's so amazing, because I would have thought that any politician who wanted to be in office for the long term would at least listen to the public, think, okay, what's right in what they're saying, and what, therefore, can I do about it? But that isn't what a lot of them are saying. This is partly because of unelected politicians, like the Eurocrats in Brussels, who don't have to really care about the people. But it's also just an increasing view that there is a right way of looking at the world and a wrong view. And that the right way is open borders and ever more liberal immigration policies and so on, and that the wrong way is anything that speaks against that.
But that has been rejected. As I say, in Italy, it's been rejected in America, it's been rejected here in the UK, and undoubtedly it's going to be rejected in one form or another in France come March. So
yes. But you said, yes, it's been rejected. But that's why this term is bandied around now.
Right.
It's been rejected everywhere, which is why we've moved on to the bit of sneering and name calling about it. You see, all of this stuff of people being lied to. You think Hillary Clinton didn't tell any fibs? You think that the camp didn't tell any fibs? Weren't we all meant to be dead in the nuclear holocaust by now, according to Remain? This idea that the people who vote the wrong way, even if in a majority, are being lied to and heads and so on, is the main theme that they've got after they've lost the argument.
And it's aided and abetted by the mainstream media, of course.
Yes, I mean this is a real problem. Is there is a sort of a media bubble that undoubtedly exists in which respectable things can be said, and outside of which the unrespectable general public exists.
The plebs. Yeah, go on.
And it's the same thing with the politicians. You've got to remember, who are the people? They're not this they're not this thing you can sort of get rid of or move along. They're the people you're meant to be answering to and informing and so on. And it is very striking the extent to which the media has joined in on this. I mean, this fake news thing we hear all about all the time. All this is a way to say, this is the news I do like and this is the news I don't like. There's plenty of fake news over the years and stories that have proved wrong in every other political direction. But this idea, as I said, and that's not to say, by the way, there isn't a load of nonsense being written out there by all sorts of people. But
of course.
This idea that there's a sort of counterfactual, and that we, the public, are so dim that we're being led astray by them, is part of this whole attempt to just basically say we, the public, must be wrong.
But what's interesting is with the growth of alternative media, both right and left, people are getting their news and their opinions in a variety of sources. And as Nigel Farage has just said to me in that interview I did earlier this morning, they better beware people like the Clinton News Network and the biased BBC, because as more platforms develop and as alternative ways of receiving the news are built up, then their power base is being taken away. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the tabloids had a power about who may get elected and who may not, the Neil Kinnock light bulb moment. That's not the case anymore, Douglas.
No, and I mean, that has upsides and downsides. The upside is that the monopoly of certain bits of the media has been broken. The downside is that it can threaten everyone into going into a kind of silo of your own views.
Yes,
that is a problem. And I mean, this is what we have seen. I would argue the people who use the populist smear, among other things, are people who actually haven't accessed the contrary view for a while. Because I mean, I like hearing all sorts of views, and there are ones I agree with and ones I don't. But there are very few that I would simply try to block out entirely from my life, because I want to hear what the other views are, and I don't sense that in this whole backlash against the Trump, Brexit, and so on. You don't hear many of the people criticizing that, saying, actually, I'd really like to go and speak to a car worker in Michigan and find out why, after voting Democrats for their whole life, they voted for Donald Trump, a Republican, for the first time. I don't hear it very much. It's just, how could we correct that man or woman? How can we make them see the light? And maybe that person isn't wrong. Maybe, to use the other analogy, maybe all the people in the north of England who voted Leave weren't wrong. Maybe they were onto something. But that's not what we hear. We hear, how can we correct all of those people?
Sure.
How can we inform them?
It is interesting. There are certain people who are coming out of the woodwork. Niall Ferguson, the esteemed historian, of course, has suddenly come out and said, I was wrong about Brexit. I got it completely wrong. I mean, maybe if more people like that do come out, then the argument will move. Or does it need an absolute change?
No, I think it will be bit by bit. Ferguson's comment is very honest, very admirable. He said, I thought that it was, he found himself arguing the anti-Brexit case, and he says he didn't really believe it that much. He sort of dug himself down into it. Yeah. And actually, everything he'd written in his career before showed that he would have been in favour of Brexit. It was slightly mystifying at the time, but I imagine there was, there was a lot of pressure, and I'm very pleased that bit by bit people will see that the Remain claims, are not as bad as they said, and that there's a very viable, very good future out there, and that it's not between voting for the liberal establishment, for want of a better term, or nuclear Armageddon.
And it's fundamentally, though, very dangerous, though, isn't it, that our media share the same view as the established elite, the political elite. It is quite dangerous that they're so close to it, and that you can't really separate out our main political parties. I mean, apart from UKIP, you can't separate out Labour, really. You can't separate them out from the Conservatives. They've all got this social justice, liberal view of the world.
Well, that's true to some extent. I mean, I would just say that there is a set of things on a whole range of issues that people who appear in front of the cameras on television as politicians or commentators and so can say, and then the things which they know would potentially be career death. You can see it in the eyes of politicians when they appear
Yeah.
on Question Time. You can see it
Yeah.
in their eyes when they appear on any program. I know, I've seen it myself. You see them and they think, their hope is that they will get through the hour without using the wrong gender-neutral pronoun about transsexuals going into gender-neutral lavatories, or
Sure.
they won't use the wrong term about people of colour, or the aim is to get through it without having made any of those gaffes. And really, out there are a lot of people who are not worrying about those things, who are worried about their jobs, worried about their livelihoods, worried about their country, but don't share those same very, for want of a better term, metropolitan sort of obsession. And that's the real divide. And it's across. It's not even a left-right thing. There's just a blob of people who worry about certain things, and a very much larger number of people who they ignore.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much indeed for coming on, Douglas. It's a pleasure to talk to you. That's Douglas Murray, Associate Director of the Henry Jackson.
We will make America great again.